Well, Dr. Phil has been following this story as it's been developing all throughout the day. He is here now with an exclusive interview. Dr. Phil, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, this is such a tragic event, and I am honored to be speaking with the ambassador, the permanent representative of Israel to the United Nations, Ambassador Danon. Ambassador, are you with us?
Yes, thank you very much for having me, Dr. Phil.
Well, it's good to talk to you again. We were just together a few days ago talking about this very problem with anti-Semitism, and I just want to extend my condolences about what has happened here. We understand that this happened right outside the Museum of Jewish Heritage, which tragically is. It's so bad that it happened right there, which is a museum to remind people and not let people forget about the Holocaust, which you and I spoke about, keeping alive in the minds of generations that some don't know about at all. And here we are talking about the tragic death of Yaron Lyndsay and Sarah Milgram. Yaron, of course, is a Christian, and Sarah is Yaron is a Israeli Christian, and Sarah is a Jewish young woman. What have you learned so far about what took place, and what do we not know?
First, thank you for your thoughts and prayers. It's appreciated, and it's a tragedy. You know, two young men, they were going to get engaged next week in Jerusalem to build a family, and now both of them will be buried, unfortunately. And, you know, the terrorist knew exactly what he was doing. He planned it very carefully. They attended an event for young professionals in D.C. that was organized by the American Jewish Committee. And the theme of the event was diplomacy, how to build bridges, how to move forward, how to support humanitarian efforts. And once the event was over, he was waiting for them, he ambushed them, and he murdered them. You know, that's part of the incitement we discussed when we met, that today you see it on campuses. I see it at the UN every day, people spreading lies about Israel. And unfortunately, that is a price. When you spread hate, when you spread evil, then the results is what we saw last night in D.C.
Well, you know, we have said that you and I talked about the fact that this is breeding such hatred on campuses around the United States, what we used to refer to as elite universities, and certainly this is happening on the East Coast. And, you know, I wonder, Ambassador, what students think when they see this kind of thing happen, when you pointed out, I referred to them as protests, and you said, really, that's too kind of a word. These aren't protests. These are riots. These are vandalisms. These are violence foisted on other students. And when they see it go to this level, do you think that there's any critical thinking where these students maybe step back and say, you know, do we have anything to do with this? Are we creating an environment where we incite this kind of thing to happen?
Absolutely. And I think, Dr. Phil, you know, we welcome, you know, the condemnations we received today, but it's not enough. We demand actions, not declarations. You know, when you look at the numbers of anti-Semitic attacks against Jews in the U.S., you understand we have a problem, and we expect that those people will be indicted, will be convicted, and will be behind bars. Unfortunately, all around the world, there are a lot of declarations, but you don't see actions. And I think we have to go against those who incite. You can't put a policeman to protect every synagogue or every Jewish gathering. You have 6 million Jews in the U.S. today, a very strong community, and they should feel safe like every other American who live here.
Well, it was interesting that just within hours, Representative Ilhan Omar from Minnesota was asked about this shooting and was unwilling to condemn it at the time and said, "I'm going to go for now," and turned around and walked off. What has happened to the environment, to the climate, to the culture when our own politicians don't step up immediately without delay and condemn this on the spot? Now, later, somebody obviously talked to her and said something, and so she did post something on X where she condemned it. But when asked about it on the street, just said, "I'm going to go for now," and turned around and walked away. What is going on that our own leaders aren't willing to condemn this kind of murderous, cowardice act on the spot? I don't get it.
That's shameful. That's shameful. And actually, you can see the distinction between those who condemn violence, period, and those who always put conditions. They will say yes, but, or maybe, or if. You don't put buts or ifs when you have violence. When somebody is murdering two young, innocent people, you need to condemn it. You need to condemn the hatred. You need to condemn the calls that we see on campuses when people call, death for Israel, death for the Jews, intifada. All those calls are calls for violence. Those calls should be condemned unequivocally.
Well, earlier this week, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had what I consider the ignorance and insensitivity to compare immigration agents to ICE, and he called them Gestapo. And, to me, that trivializes what the Jewish people went through because that's not what's happening, of course, because what the Gestapo actually did was something that was completely different. It was ethnic cleansing. It was the intent to destroy and mass killings and marching people to their deaths. And it seems to me that it cheapens the tragedy and the suffering of those people when you throw around words like Gestapo when you're talking about immigration officials exercising congressional findings, congressional law, and they throw that around. It just seems to me that they're not taking seriously the plight of the Jewish people, and it cheapens the entire experience.
Well, there is no place for that comparison, period. You cannot compare anything to the Holocaust. You cannot compare anything to the Gestapo. And we are seeing it also at the UN, when some countries come and try to make the equivalence, of the IDF soldiers, the brave soldiers to protect us, to the Nazis, or trying to blame us for committing genocide. This is a tactic, to hurt Israel. We should not accept it, and we should tell it very clearly. No one should use the language of the Holocaust for those internal debates.
Sarah Milgram was an intelligent and vibrant young woman that grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. I actually lived there during part of my high school years. And she was a Jewish young woman that lived in Overland Park, Kansas. And here she is murdered on the streets of D.C. by someone yelling, "Free Palestine." This just seems like such a random selection of a target to be made an example for this misguided terrorist. If you're picking someone from the heartland of America, Overland Park, Kansas, of all places, we're now getting pretty indiscriminate. And this wasn't someone that was activist. It wasn't someone that was attacking Palestine. It wasn't someone involved in the war effort. At this point, all critical thinking, all discriminatory thinking is out the window. What do we need to call on our government here in the United States, President Trump, who condemned this instantly? What do we need to call on our government to do to help in this fight?
Well, first of all, I agree with you that it wasn't an attack against Israel or against the Jewish community. It was an attack against the American values, and I think the American leadership and institution must take, actions against that. And I would expect to see a federal action that would actually give the tools to law enforcement to handle those who promote violence, whether it's on campus or off campus. There is no place for violence. There is a free speech, but there is no place for violence. And I think in the last few years, we have seen too many cases that the line was crossed.
Well, and this is one of the worst. And having met you, sat with you, and talked to you, you speak with such conviction and clarity about the distinction between free speech and crossing the line into violence, and stand so strong. And I can tell you, as someone that speaks to the heartland in America, that people just simply do not agree with this kind of behavior. It is condemned by the heartland in America, and we are grieving the loss of these young people. And I can tell you the people that I speak for in America stand strong with the state of Israel, and count them among our most valuable friends and allies. And our hearts break with you when this kind of thing happens. So we grieve with you at this terrible time, and I thank you for talking to us and bringing clarity to this situation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your prayers, and thank you for your support.
We'll talk again soon, Ambassador, and our hearts are with these families, and we all pray for them to be strong during this difficult time, and I will see you very soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So long.